It's all about the story. News Talk 660
It will be found an unjust and unwise jealousy to deprive a man of his natural liberty upon the supposition he may abuse it. George Washington.
They who would give up an essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty or security. Benjamin Franklin.
The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. Patrick Henry.
America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it would be because we destroyed ourselves. Abraham Lincoln.
I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them. Thomas Jefferson.
Property is surely a right of mankind as real as liberty. John Adams.
The Constitution is the guide which I never will abandon. George Washington.
Welcome to the Saturday morning wake-up call right here on KFAR. It's local talk radio. This is technically hour one of Patriots Lament. For the next 2 hours, we will regale you with stories of liberty and justice for all, or some such. I'm Steve Floyd, the monkey behind the machine. I'm here basically just to make sure that you can't stop the signal. Joining us in the studio, as always, we've got Aaron Bennett and Josh Bennett. Good morning, gentlemen. Wait. Say that again.
Good morning.
Hey, there we go.
That button stinks. Good morning.
Is it the button or the mic?
No, it's that button.
It might be the Steve, actually.
I don't know. The mic's doing it when I talk into it.
No, it's always that little knobby.
Hello. You're not getting that?
Oh, yeah. Sucks.
So we've got a couple of brand new tin cans in here for you to talk into this morning. Don't tap it. That's just going to make it all kinds of worse.
I don't know if you know this or not, but today's our second anniversary on the show.
Today is?
You're kidding, really?
It's year 2. Yeah. Well, technically it's the 28th, but this is the second year.
So this is
as the week-wise.
So this is the start of year 3.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yes, you are.
Time flies.
Anyway.
When you're ticked.
Unfortunately, Glenn Beck's over, and now we're on to this show. I was enjoying listening to Glenn Beck this morning. He was talking about how the IRS was going after different people. Of course, that seems to be the topic with every right-leaning radio show, which would be all of them. About the IRS going after different groups, and one of the interesting things he pointed out was that the 501c3 that the recent 501c3 applicants, the IRS, part of their questionnaire was asking for details on their congregation, the people in their congregation's prayers, what kind of prayers that they offered up. And Glenn Beck was pointing out how ridiculous that was, and he started talking about how if he wants to build a bathroom in his own house, it's got to meet certain regulations or he gets fined. If he puts a barrel out at on his own property to catch rainwater, he could be put in prison. If he grows food on his own land and sells it to his neighbor, he could be fined and imprisoned. Who are these people, the IRS? Who are they to ask what kind of prayers are being uttered in whatever church is applying for 501c3. He was pointing out that Americans need to stand together against these people. And I was sitting there thinking about it.
Yep, you're right. I'm following.
Who are these people? Who is the IRS? How did they get there? How are they any different than those same people that would fine him for the bathtub, or the people that came for the rainwater, that are treading on his property, which is, in my opinion, would be a way bigger concern than just the outright theft of his property through the IRS. Aren't they actually one and the same? When he refers to these people, who are these people? Who actually would come and get him? They're not nameless, faceless beings out there. They're the collective. They're us. They didn't just magically appear. It's not we're against them, or, I hear people say all the time, well, I'm pretty sure they got a file on me, or they're listening to me,
That's
or
my favorite.
They're watching me. Who is it that you think they are? When they came to get Schaefer Cox, or when they came to get Randy Weaver, or when they came and got Maynard Campbell, who are they? Aren't they in fact us? Are they nameless, faceless aliens that come beam down and they're the they? Are they gods? I don't get it. What power does the IRS have that wasn't voted to them? The 13th Amendment was ratified. Congressmen that we voted in stood by and did it, or at least stood by and watched. Lincoln did more things than all the presidents combined before him outside of what he was allowed to do legally. He trampled on the Constitution. And in his fourth term, he told his staff, when he got reelected on his second term there, he told his staff, all of the things that I did that were illegal are sanctified because I was reelected. The people agreed with me. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. There's no difference in what he did than in what the IRS does, or the guy that comes and takes you to jail for rainwater or vegetables. It's your neighbor that does it. It's you that does it to your neighbor. How is your neighbor coming and oppressing you for vegetables that you tried to sell to your other neighbor any different than you voting on something or voting someone in to oppress him your way? Didn't the root cause of what they are coming to do to you come from you yourself? Josh?
What?
A great example. Can I jump in?
I wish you would.
Well, here,
Well,
great
you're
example.
doing so good.
A great example of this is what's going on with the wood smoke issue. How many people that do not have wood stoves are standing up for those who do? When you look at the arbitrary measurements that have been moved around, by the way, our air actually, if you look at the actual quality of the air, is better than it was 10 years ago. And yet they keep moving the standard so that we are never going to be in compliance.
Right, but the concept I'm going for is, let's say that they come to get your wood stove.
But why would they? It's because my neighbor calls them to come get me.
And who is they?
Us.
Your neighbor.
They is we.
You can't say you want Obama out and want Mitt Romney in, because you're just shifting oppressions. You're shifting enslavements. You're shifting the masters. The same concept goes across the board. You're either going to have liberty or you're going to have something else. You're going to have limited plunder, you're going to have unlimited plunder, or you're going to have no plunder. And America is in a limited plunder society where you have to get voted into plunder. Where if we were communists or something, we could all plunder equally. At least in our system, you have to get voted into plunder, right?
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Well, it was Jim and Keena actually called it a cancer, referring it to government. So what he was saying was very seldom with government, which is cancer, You don't have people that say, I want a limited cancer. I want less intrusive cancer. I want cancer that is there, but it doesn't kill me immediately.
It only eats a little bit at a time.
Eats a little bit at a time, where the sane person is going to be, he's going to be the person that says, I want no cancer. But then when the sane person says, I want no cancer, and actually shows a cure for the cancer, the people that are protecting cancer protect it even more, and they say, whoa, and they badmouth the people that have the cure, and they say, we need cancer.
It's a necessary evil.
We have to have some cancer.
What do you?
Because if we don't have some cancer, the bad cancer will come.
The big cancer will come.
But
if we don't contain the cancer,
that's where I was exactly. We don't want to get rid of it. We just want to contain it. But I mean, that is where I was trying to go with that. That's what struck me about what he was talking about. But the other thing that stuck out so really hard to me about what Glenn Beck was talking about is we got to get this mentality out of our mind that they're a they. They're not they. They're us. They're you. They're the same oppression that you push.
Yeah, when you were talking, the reason I was kind of in oblivion there, I was reading Etienne de la Botte, trying to find something to correlate what you're saying, even though everything in there actually does. I was looking for something specific, but he points that out, and we've talked about this over and over. In 1552, when he was 22 years old, 22.
Well, that's 10 years younger than me, Josh.
And I just to bring it up, what Winston said one time when he called in, the last time we really delved into him, to De La Botte, was he said, imagine this guy wrote this when he was 22 years old, The Politics of Obedience. And for him to write something like that, it had to have been something that he'd been studying, pondering, thinking for many years before. So he had to have, by reason, must have been even when he was a teenager, seeing these things, thinking about these things, to write something so eloquent and wonderful. I just bring that up as a side note, but he points out over and over in his essay that it is us. Nothing happens without us, our consent. Everything is driven off of our supposed, they say collective, but there's no such thing as collective. It's individuals doing individual things, and it's a bunch of individuals doing something, but there's no such thing as this body that's called, that there's no living collective. It's individuals. It's individual action, and we say, well, it's for the good of the collective. Well, it's the collective wants, but there's no such thing as that. It's individuals, because if you don't have the individuals, you don't have this being called collective.
And all it takes, realistically, is one individual to stand up against the collective to come up with the works. Because that one person standing up might give somebody else who was part of the machinations of the collective the courage to say, hey, I can't do this.
Well, the problem is the collective, almost without exception, does things that the individual wouldn't do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be collected. That's why the reason I turned off Glenn Beck in a huff at the end of his rant was he said, people, we have got to link arms and all come together.
Let's do it right now.
As a collective.
Well, if you think about that, the individuality of it, collectives always are, when people get together like that, at least for the most part, these collectives are downtrodden on individuals. And it's just like with the wood smoke thing, just as an example. There's a collective out there, a bunch of individuals that want to ban wood smoke. They want to ban wood burning. Well, they're not banning another collective. They're banning the rights of individuals. Singling out, because you have to know that there'll be some that say, no, screw you, I'm going to burn wood anyways. So the collective, for the most part, always is downtrodden on the individual. And our whole point at this show, and our whole point, well, I'm just back and forth on this. But originally the theory behind this country was individualism. It wasn't for collectivism. It wasn't for the collective good. It wasn't for the community. I hate that word.
The children.
It definitely wasn't for children. It was for the individual. It was individual men who did things. It was individual, like just say the revolution. Individual men volunteered to fight in their militia, and those individual men volunteered to go home whenever they felt like it.
Until George Washington.
The collective is not a good thing. You know, I got to back up to where you're talking about the 501c3 and the IRS is targeting these people and blah, blah, blah. Well, hello, folks. If you're filing for a license from the state, what gives you the right to tell them what questions they can ask you? Why can't they ask you whatever they want? You're the one that's begging. You're the serf. You're the permittee. You're the one in there saying, I want to be this organization. I want to have free speech to do such and such and such. Will you give me a license so I can do that, please? So what right do you have to come back and say, hey, that question shouldn't be asked? Why?
Yeah, why shouldn't it?
That's a fair question. I think if you look at where these 501c3 pressures come from, why people go in the first place to file for it, it's so that their donors can use their contributions as a tax write-off.
Correct.
They get the pressure then from their donors is saying, hey, I want to claim this on my taxes. I want to be able to, that $2,000 I just gave you, I want to be able to take that as a tax exemption. Can't do that unless you have the right paperwork on file with the IRS.
Sure.
And so then that group, whether it is a political group or whether it's even a church, will go and get the paperwork done, not because they feel necessarily like they need the permission of the government, but so that they can have that piece of paper, that little rubber stamp that can turn around there and get their members that much less taxes. Is that?
And if we all want everyone to pay their fair share, and you can't find anyone except a small circle of friends that we have that don't want people to pay their fair share of taxes. Well, if we're going to have people paying their fair share of taxes, then by golly, we need the IRS investigating these people to make sure they're not taking advantage of the system.
Right. So there shouldn't be any limit to the questions they have to ask to achieve that end.
No, absolutely not. And I'll go out on a limb here and say that if this was the Bush administration and the IRS was asking and targeting certain liberal organizations, the people on the right, the conservative groups, these same folks, and you can't tell yourself, no, you wouldn't, because, yeah, you would. You'd be going, darn right. Those stinking commies.
What right do they have?
They're not a real organization. They're trying to take advantage of the system.
You kind of stole my thunder there, Josh. I was going to make the point that there's been some protests. There's been some protests right here in Fairbanks. I stopped by one. And it was predominantly, it was all Republicans. I didn't see any Democrats. The Democrats like to pay taxes. That's what it is. Or is it exactly what you just said?
It's who it was targeting.
Right.
Absolutely. We want people to pay their fair share, then by golly wally, we need to investigate these people, because what if they're taking advantage of the system?
Hey, I'll tell you right now, you guys remember a guy named Bill Fulton?
No.
Bill Fulton started the Church of Guinness and actually pulled a business license for it, and went through some kind of crap to become an ordained minister in the Church of Guinness. And yes, I am talking about the beer.
I know.
And he legally pulled that off so he could write off taxes.
Well, there you go right there. We need more IRS oversight into these 501c3 corporations.
Sure we do. Because
Bill Fulton wasn't paying his fair share.
You know what? He was working for Joe Miller as an undercover Democrat.
So that means he was a liberal, so he says. So he was a liberal, so there you go. We need more IRS agents looking into these things, because we had a liberal Democrat working for a Republican something or other.
And they could have stopped that if they just would have looked into his 501c3.
Yep, they could have nailed him right there. Why isn't the IRS doing their job?
I agree.
More regulation, tighter restrictions. We need the state.
Joe Miller kind of raised up the flag on this whole thing locally for us in the IRS thing.
Well, it's pretty big. It's nationwide, too, news. I mean, Steve always says that people don't understand. We're kidding. Obviously, we hate the IRS and don't think you should file for 501c3s to have free speech and to say what you want and do what you wish and to protest.
I wonder if...
wait, are you...
I was going to say, well, Joe Miller...
I thought you were going to say you were changing your mind.
I've been watching Joe Miller for a while now, and I just wanted to raise the question, I guess. He never had a problem with the IRS until they started targeting Republicans. So I'm going to assume he didn't have a problem with taxes in general.
Well, that's an interesting situation right there because if you think about it, one thing I've been seeing and hearing on the radio shows and stuff, if you listen to one, what they're talking about, you're breathing too close to the microphone, son.
It's not me.
You're getting collective echo.
That
was a real collective.
It was from that.
So anyway, the
button's going.
What I've been hearing about is that everyone's saying, well, this is proof in the pudding that we need to go to a flat tax and the oxymoronic fair tax. So these people don't have a problem fundamentally with theft. They have a problem with the way that they're being stolen from. So there's why someone asked me if I was going to go to this IRS tax protest the other day. And I said no. And the specific reason why I would gladly go if these people were protesting taxation and saying down with taxes like an American should, like they did 250 years ago. They didn't argue about which way they were taxing. They just said down with taxes. No taxation without representation. And we gave a pretty good case on this show that we are not represented. So we're back in the same thing. So I would have led the charge then if everyone was there was going to protest taxation. But all they were there for was to
equal taxation.
Equal.
And it wouldn't even have been an issue if it wasn't
conservatives being targeted.
Huh.
If it was liberals being targeted, you conservatives know for a fact that you would have been going darn right.
Not a peep.
I'm going to do a double.
I'm going to give an extra $10 on my tax form to go to they need a little checkoff box. It says, would you like the IRS, donate $10 to the IRS to look into liberal organizations? You can give them $10. And then have another box that says, would you like to donate $10 to the IRS to give, so they will go after conservative organizations, and all the liberals give an extra $10. Boom. Deficit reduction solved.
I like
genius.
that.
That's genius right there.
Solved right there.
You know, we had the Indiana Ice Classic here just last week. It came to a close. Latest one ever. Mm-hmm. The winner, $300 and some thousand. After taxes, their take home was about $179,000. I was telling my wife this, and she's like, "What? How is that fair? That the government gets half of the money?" I'm like, "Honey, that's." I know we've been poor for so long. You don't know what it's like, but the more money you make, the more money they take. You get rich, and they penalize you for being rich. They take more than, in some cases, more than half of your income away from you.
That's all coming home to roost too. Americans have been riding on its prosperity from years past. People don't understand how long it takes to rape a nation of its wealth. You look at when was China taken over by the communists?
1948.
40, yeah.
And they weren't in utter poverty until the 80s, right? About then. Almost same for Russia. They weren't really struggling until about the 70s or 80s.
Afghanistan.
You have to realize when both those places took over and redistributed everything, they inherited a lot of wealth. They inherited a lot of factories and machinery and so on and so forth. It doesn't happen overnight. But you see, I mean, anybody can look back now and say, well, yeah, communism is ridiculous. It leads to absolute poverty. But that's the point. It leads to it. America was liberal for so long with its markets that it's going to take a while for us to see it. But I think it's coming home to roost pretty hard. Less and less people are making the kind of money that they did, could, and should be. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. We're almost as bad as communists. We just got, what?
Got a few years to go.
55% left to go?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, there was I think tax rate, Roosevelt wanted it to be 75.
Yeah, but the big difference is in the communist country, we're actually, as far as our economy goes, we're probably almost right there with them, because in the communist society, everybody's equally worthless.
They're a collective.
Right. In our society, you have half of the people working, getting half their money taken away to support the half of the people that don't work. So if you add the two together, we're basically communists.
And then the other 25% that don't produce anything that do work.
Mm-hmm. The people who like to get paid without actually getting anything accomplished.
Right. People that are in government. Every single one of them.
I didn't actually have to say that. You didn't have to say that. People could read into that. You didn't have to go right out and say it's.
Well, they're worthless. I mean, to society. Come on, we want to talk about community and society and for the children. State workers are worthless. They don't produce
and you mean
anything.
capital S, state workers, not just state of Alaska workers.
Right.
And whether you're at city
And we
government,
don't mean-
borough
Right,
government,
they're
state
100%
government.
non-producers. In fact,
Yeah,
they actually, or the other way around,
leeches.
they produce bads.
They consume. And they're not worthless as human beings, as
No,
persons.
look at your law
but their
enforcement. They
jobs.
actually produce bads. Things that take from society.
Had yet another trooper kill somebody yesterday, or was it Thursday?
No, the IRS produces goods.
Oh, that's a good song.
All right, you got it on Patriots Lament right here on
The IRS
KFAR.
produces goods?
Oh, yeah, I forgot they weren't targeting liberals.
458-TALK is the number if you're outside of our immediate area code. Put a 907 on it first. Check us out online, KFAR660.com, and on your smartphone with the free TuneIn Radio app.
Keep it here for Fox News, next on KFAR.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. Officials in Mount Vernon, Washington, looking for a stopgap prefabricated bridge to replace the one that collapsed over the Skagit River Thursday. Meanwhile, State Transportation Director Lynn Peterson says the bridge was inspected last year.
The span that failed was hit and it was repaired, and we did some other inspection and repair at that time.
3 people injured in the accident. Recovery efforts continue in tornado-ravaged Moore, Oklahoma. Governor Mary Fallin tells Fox News the response has been incredible.
It is so active here. The streets are open. I see homeowners at their houses. I see lots of volunteers of all ages walking around. We have thousands of volunteers that are on the ground.
24 died when the tornadoes hit Monday. In San Antonio, firefighters have pulled people from submerged cars and rescued passengers whose bus was swept away in floodwaters. Several roads closed. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Some call it conservatism gone crazy. Some call it hate radio. We call it what it is, local talk radio. Be a part of the discussion on 660 AM.
Don't wanna be an American idiot. Don't want a nation under the new media. And can you hear the sound of hysteria? The subliminal mind, America. Welcome to a new kind of tension all across the alien mission. Everything isn't meant to be okay. Television dreams of tomorrow. We're not the ones I'm meant to follow. Though that's enough to argue.
Welcome back to Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. Actually, this is technically hour 1. We call it the Saturday morning wake-up call because if you listen, by the time we meet you at the halfway point or so of the first hour, which is where we're at right now, your blood should be boiling over, which is kind of the whole point of the show, isn't it? All right, we do have a couple calls coming in. Josh, would you like to go to the calls?
I don't know.
What would you like to do?
Yeah.
They're spinning.
I was thinking about my gangsters that work for me, guys that drive for me. They see, we were talking about taxes, the more you make, the more they take. And when it gets up to a certain amount of their overtime, it's just like ching. Uncle Sam takes it all. Boom, boom. I have a couple guys that work for me. It's like, no overtime. I don't want the overtime, because they know when they get to a certain amount, all of it, they're out there working for nothing.
Yeah, I used to work at a place called Rural Steel, and I figured out that if I was going to work overtime, I had to work more than 8 hours of overtime, or I actually lost money.
Right. Yeah, there's a situation where they can do so many loads.
People wonder why the productivity of America has gone down.
Exactly. Why do it?
Well, it's a disincentive to hard work.
Yeah.
It's a disincentive to success.
It's almost as much as the incentive to not work, because you get money for not working.
Exactly. If you can,
I'm thinking about trying that one out.
No, I took a call.
We need a whole box of crickets in here that we could just shake.
Cricket.
I took a call a couple of months ago from a fellow who actually had figured out that it would be better for his daughter, in terms of the benefits that she would receive, both from the medical and the WIC program, and even in terms of the income coming into his house from unemployment, for him to stay on the unemployment rolls. Then for him to go to work, he's a single dad, going to work, putting her in some kind of a daycare or something, and all of the extra money that he made then would basically be sucked away, that they would be worse off financially than if he just stayed on unemployment.
Well, we need some cancer.
A little bit of cancer.
We need a little bit of cancer.
Of course we do.
What do you want to do? Cure the cancer, Steve? Come on. What would we do without cancer?
Exactly.
What cancer? What would we do without cancer?
It'd be like the wild, wild west.
Who would build the roads? We all see the roads being built by cancer every day. Who would build the roads?
I don't know.
Oh, wait a minute.
What would we do if somebody else's cancer invaded?
Is it cancer building the road up there that's redoing the road up on Chino Hot Springs, just past Chino Hot Springs on the Stees? Is that the state doing that, or?
No.
Oh, that's a private company.
But I do want to say that their side dump rocked me when I was coming into town. He needs to chill out a little bit on the speed.
Wow. On the air. Warfare with another company. Let's do it.
458 Talk is the number. We go to the phones.
I was being friendly.
Good morning, caller. Who's this?
This is Hillbilly.
Hillbilly, what's on your mind today?
Well, I want to clarify something that you were talking about earlier, and I think you'll agree with me. You tell me if you don't. I don't believe it's the politicians. I mean, they have culpability, and culpability is definitely accrued if you vote. I agree with that. But I still think the major culpability has to lay with those who continue to feed the beast. And I think that we're not paying enough attention to the idea of stop paying taxes. And I'm not talking about a tax revolt. I agree we can't do that unless we have millions of people to join us. But on an individual level, it is not illegal to withdraw from the taxing system. It is not illegal to arrange your life in such a way that you do not owe taxes. I'm coming up on my 10th anniversary, July 1st, of being in Alaska. I came here with a wife and 6 children and less than $100 to my name. Right now, I'm worth about $250,000. And I did not lie. I did not cheat. I did not steal. I did not sell drugs. I did not cheat on my taxes. I did not owe taxes throughout that entire period of time. Now, I've talked about it before, and I've invited people to call me, and some have, as to how to go about doing that. But until one is willing to do it, at least one wishes they could do it, then we can't really say we've pledged our fortunes to freedom, can we? We have to at least be willing to think about the idea of changing our lives. And you said yourself you only got a couple of years before the whole system collapses anyway. And I think we have a little longer than that because I think that the socialist system will institute enforced slavery before it collapses. Every other one did. The Russians did, and the Chinese. That's what's keeping them alive is forced slavery. So they will have abject forced slavery. They will sweep up all these people on welfare. What do you think they made the welfare rolls for? It's to find out who are the lazy bums that need to go to a retraining center and have forced slavery. And they will do it. You will work for your food eventually in this system before the system collapses. They're not going to just close up and quit and let you have your freedom back. Now, I think we should quit paying taxes, and I think we should emphasize that a little more. So that's my call today.
That's a pretty good point. I mean, there's nothing to argue with. I know exactly what you're talking. It seems like he's got a bad. Sorry about that.
It would take me a whole show to explain how to do it, but everybody knows there are ways.
Sure.
I mean, if you start a garden, you are increasing wealth, and it's tax-free.
Yep.
You either increase wealth and then, to the same degree, withdraw your income. Now, you've not changed your lifestyle one iota, if that's what you want to do. But if you really want to, you're going to have to also sell your land in the borough and buy land outside the borough. And why Patriots won't do that in mass is way beyond me, because the few people that are doing it at Catalina are having a great time.
So, can I ask you a question here? What happens then when a borough starts forming around you, like what's going on down in Indiana?
Well, we're active in fighting that, and you watch and see if they can actually get it done.
Right, but what if it happens?
If it happens, I'll move out of the borough. I will not live in a borough. I'll go live, or I'll live in the borough just up in the hills where they can't find me. For example, it is legal to start a trap line. If you have a trap line, it is legal to build a cabin on that trap line on skids. If you live there, you're legal. $25 a year, and you're legal. You can plant a garden, you can fish and hunt and do subsistence. If Patriots would do it, man.
Right, but I think Josh and I show more revolves around the fact of the catch in what you're saying there is if you pay $25 a year and get your license, our point would be, and then they can come and tell you exactly what you can do, and they have the right to, because of the license.
I'll just go live in the woods.
Because you paid the money. I understand, and I agree with your point 98%.
I think, there's another option, too, is miners. I believe this is still true. When you mine gold, until you process it or exchange it for cash or whatever, you can put a ton of gold in your backyard and you don't have to pay taxes on it.
Right, correct.
That's still like that?
Yep.
But as far as I'm determined to go, maybe they can't go that far. But everybody needs to have that heart. That's all I'm saying. A man that doesn't even care, a man that's going to complain about everything, but he's still going to pay his taxes. He's still going to go to work for the man. Well, I don't care about what he ends up doing. I mean, I don't feel any kinship to that man at all.
Right, but I guess the point that we bring up on this show all the time is the premise is still the same. You know, it remains the same. The state still is, and it still reaches out. I mean, when your example is to get a license for something, and then later on you're going to complain about the way they tell you have to abide by that license. I mean, it's a lot like the 501c3. I mean,
I'm just saying that's one step. If you feel like you have to be on a legal trap line, I'll just go take my right in the good Lord to go live in the wilderness and see if they come get me. If they do, well, then I'll deal with it then. They won't like it, and I won't like it, of course. But the point is to sit around in the town until the revolution comes, to me, is still garnering the culpability. In other words, you can burn down the zoo if you're a zealot. If you don't feel like burning down the zoo, well, then at least you could vote against having a zoo. Okay, that's cool too. But if other people vote to have the zoo, at least don't go visit the zoo and pay to get in.
Yeah, and you got a really good point. But I think our mission's more to keep that revolution from happening in the first place, or at the minimum, have the revolution in the mind.
Well, that's what he said, and I think that's the most important part. The most important part that you brought up was at least have the heart or in your mind to be able to do that. That's our whole. That's my whole goal on this show is to get people's hearts to change.
All right, hey, Timothy, you're breaking up on us. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Well, that is the whole point. Is to have the heart, at least. I mean, that's all we ask people. At least in your very little minds, or some of you, your very big minds, or your mediocre minds, or your brilliant minds, start thinking at least and take it to heart something different.
What if I have a tapioca mind?
Thanks for muddling up the.
At least put it in your heart. Have a different thought process, and bury it in your heart at least somewhere that you will do something different. You can do something different. There is a different route that we can take besides this.
What would you say to people who draw these imaginary lines and say, well, when they come to take my gun? Or, well, when they come to take my neighbor, or et cetera, et cetera.
Well, we know
we've hammered
that.
Yeah, lines are artificial manliness, basically. All that is just saying, yeah, well, let's see, what's the most least... If they do this, because I don't think they will, then I'm going to get pissed. Boy, watch out, because I'm going to be all over you like Donkey Kong.
Right, we draw...
like a spider monkey.
We draw lines so we don't have to do anything now.
Put off the action, exactly.
Yeah, we draw the lines way behind us when they've been stepping over the line and scratching miles ago. They scratch, when the kid draws a line in the sand there with his foot and says, cross the line. Well, they've been jumping them. They jump 3 or 4 at a time. And we just keep backing up and saying, yeah, well, let's see, the old Bugs Bunny one. When he says, cross this line, he just keeps backing up. Oh, yeah, well, I dare you to cross this line.
Until you back all the way up
I'm stepping.
Right off the cliff.
Yep. Until you go off the cliff. Boy.
Is the cliff a gas chamber?
Bugs Bunny, philosophical genius.
He's a genius.
Keep crossing the line.
Cross this line. I dare you.
I'm a stepping. Yeah.
458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Hello?
Hello. Who is this?
Token Socialist.
All right. What's up, Token?
First, I want to say good morning, gentlemen, and Steve.
Good morning.
Notice how I'm separate. Gentlemen and Steve. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
Right. You're awake this morning. I'd like to directly challenge what libertarianism means to those of us on the bottom of our society, if I may.
Go for it.
Okay, in Rothbard's Libertarian Manifesto, he argues that people are on the bottom of our society, and the main reason why people are on the bottom of our society is because of their internal choices, their values, their worldview, their behavior, their choices, etc. Unlike, they're not there for external reasons, as liberals would argue. So does that sound about right?
I would agree with that.
Well, this is what Rothbard argues. So I want to say what it's like to be on the bottom of our society, and subjectively, it's kind of like you're on the Titanic, and there's a big hole in the side of the ship. You're surrounded by icy water. It's just a matter of time. You're going down. All the lifeboats are gone, but the bar's open, and the band's playing. So what the hell? You might as well get drunk. And there's Rothbard about 300 yards out there in a half-empty lifeboat, pointing his finger at us, saying, see, that's their problem. They're not goal-oriented.
Right.
Objectively, I'm sorry?
But Han Top would have summed that up by pointing out the reason for that is the state.
Right. Well, could I continue, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so objectively, there's a famous psychology experiment where they took this poor dog and they put him in a little tight cage with a metal grid on the bottom. They keep giving this dog a strong shock. And at first, the dog would, rage and tear against the cage and howl and just try to break out. But as time went on, the dog would fight slower and slower and slower. And after time of going through this, and the dog's getting shocked and he can't get out, and he fights less and less and less. And so finally, at the end of the experiment, the dog's just laying on the bottom of the cage. And every time he gets a shock, he would just quiver. And you could even open the door of the cage after time. And I think it was about 40% of the time, the dog wouldn't even try to escape. And so Rothbard would point at that and say, see, that dog's not trying to help himself. Statistically, a black American is more than twice as likely to be incarcerated as a white American. So either black people are more than twice as bad as white people, or it's something else. And even in a red state, the extrapolations are obvious. Go ahead.
Well, Rothbard wouldn't argue that the reason that the blacks were in percentage-wise more blacks in prison than whites because of the way that they were themselves as a people. He would have argued that the reason they were in there is because the state put them there. Because the state had arbitrary restrictions on what so-and-so and so-and-so could do, and they threw them in jail.
I know. I agree with you, but what I'm saying is the present reality of today is there's millions of people in this country who are just very, very badly messed up, and, take the state away, and, they've got this negative trajectory, and, there's 100,000 young men, and if you look at them the wrong way, in this country there's probably 100,000 young men, you look at them the wrong way, and they'll go for a gun, and it's not going to be McDonald's that turns their lives around.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you believe that does welfare create better people or worse people, statistically wise?
I believe...
Does it fix the situation?
Okay, I believe that we should help each other. I believe that we have a corporate responsibility to help each other. But I believe that the way this help has been expressed by the left, the official left, is horrible and destructive and pandering, blah, blah, blah.
I guess my follow-up question, though, is of all those black guys in jail, how many of them were on welfare or at least beneficiaries of welfare, do you think?
Probably most of them.
Do you think that we created that?
I think that slavery went on for hundreds of years and people were destroyed spiritually, and once you break a person spiritually, it can easily be passed on from generation to generation. I mean, screwed up people often raise screwed up kids, and most of these people were on welfare, but most of them also ate pickles.
It's learned helplessness.
Well, it's not so much learned helplessness. That may be a part of it, but I think the single most important thing is if you have screwed up parents, there's a real good chance you're going to grow up screwed up. If you grow up in this is another thing that Rothbard says. He says one thing that's wrong with people like me is that we have this freely expressed sense of aggression, that we express our violent tendencies too quickly, and that's a part of our problem. But Josh, you've been in jail. What's it like if you're in jail and you don't manifest a ready capacity to express violence?
Well, you can get beat up.
Or worse.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is Rothbard argues that what's wrong with people like me is all on the inside, and I'm saying there's a lot of external factors out there that are destroying us.
The argument is that the external factor is the state, and you just walked us through that it's the state.
And I think that
at least viably.
I don't adhere 100% to Murray and Rothbard either, or anyone actually. But part of what you're talking about, I mean, part of it is the learned helplessness. And part of that is also that you can unlearn helplessness. And when there is a point where we have to have self-responsibility, and I think that all of it is muddled when we I don't think that you and I can have a proper discussion about this when we have the ever-arching shadow over us of the state. I mean, it's a totally different situation then. If we took this state, and I disagree a little bit, I disagree completely when you said we have a corporate responsibility to help people. I think we have an individual responsibility to help people that are poor. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I believe because of my beliefs, I was told by my God that I have an individual responsibility to care for the poor, help the widows, seek justice for the fatherless. That I see as an individual responsibility. And the reason I believe it's individual because when it becomes a corporate responsibility, someone has to steal collective for that corporate entity to give away. And I don't think there's some people out there I don't want to help. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. There's some people that I don't wish to have my money stolen from me and given to someone else because I think they have the ability to take care of themselves. And it's like what we talked about, where there's some people out there that say, hey, why work? I can do better being on the welfare roll. But until we take the state out of the picture, then I think we have a different discussion, or we have a more truthful discussion, because you are right. There are externals, situations, there are externals to people's lives that affect them. There's no doubt about that. But I think that there are also externals in people's lives where they can make themselves better. Not everyone is subject to where they grew up or what they are. There is a point to where that is true. Like some guy that's born in Africa, he might never get out of the situation that he's in. But I would go to Africa and argue that maybe the state he's living in is part of the reason of his oppression.
But even that guy in Africa is not absolved from the personal responsibility of taking care of his neighbor. Token socialist, can I ask you a question?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm sorry, I was going to sleep. I mean, not going to sleep, but I was...
Okay. Have you heard of the story of the Good Samaritan?
Definitely.
Okay. Now, when the priest passed by, saw that person lying on the side of the road, his reaction was, I don't want to get involved. And so he got as far away from that individual who was hurting as he possibly could. The Levite came by, had a very similar reaction. It was along the same lines of, you know what, somebody ought to take care of that guy. I'm really glad we have a corporate structure out there. I'm really glad that we have welfare to come and take care of this guy. It's not my responsibility. He crossed over on the other side of the road. The Samaritan came by, a Samaritan who, by the way, for somebody who doesn't know, is a person of a different background. A person who was not even of the same lineage or of the same political... It'd be like a Republican helping a Democrat.
What?
Exactly. Or God forbid, a Democrat helping a Republican.
That example's too extreme.
Somebody coming along and saying, you know what, even though I don't agree with you, even though I don't believe the same thing you believe, you are an individual in need. I have a personal responsibility to help you.
That, to make it even more extreme, that specific example would be more like a Christian helping a Muslim.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to throw out real quick, if we're going to go, this whole thing is based off Rothbard. One of Rothbard's arguments is that compassion doesn't even exist without the market. Until we're able to, our time preference is able to go to a point where we've saved up capital accumulation, compassion can't even be born until then.
Right. If no one has anything, they can't share and help the
They won't even look on other people with compassion.
The moral of the Good Samaritan stories, though, is that who is my neighbor? And Christ said, everybody is your neighbor.
Yeah.
And, you know, you and I have talked before in private, and it was a great talk, and I enjoyed it. And I think we probably agree more than we disagree about a lot of things. I got to hear part of your life story, and I don't agree with what happened to you. But I think that a lot of our discussions can't be true discussions when we have the shadow. I mean, it's just like when we talk about a free market in America. Yeah, well, there isn't a free market in America. There is to a point, but all of it's regulated. And I would like to see what ways that these problems that we have, and these social problems, these political, well, there wouldn't be any political problems, but the economic problems, how they would solve themselves. If they would solve themselves, how would it look differently if you didn't have that shadow of the state over you and everyone loved their neighbor as themselves? I mean, that's ultimately what we talk about here. Maybe we don't say it enough, is love your neighbor as yourself. And to
let your neighbor be an end to himself.
Yeah.
One last quick question.
Sure.
Okay, on the stuff we do agree on, and we do agree on a lot of stuff, and thank you for letting me challenge, but on the stuff we do agree on, what is the action plan for local implementation? And I'll listen on the radio. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks for that.
Thanks for the call. I like it when this guy calls.
Yeah,
because he actually.
Well, he's very thoughtful. And so, what is the action plan?
I gave him.
I have a couple of good action plans, but I'm not ready to reveal them yet.
I gave him a book for New Liberty, and he actually read it, obviously, which I applaud, because, I mean, if more people were like the token socialists and thought and used their mind, we'd probably go a lot further along in this collective society of ours. What's the end goal? I think, how do we change? What's the strategy? I think that I know that it has to be that people have to change their minds.
It's kind of a two-part deal. People have to understand the law, first of all. That's the most important thing. They have to understand that what they're forcing on each other and what they abide by is not law.
Are we recommending Bastille right now?
That's a good start, for sure. It's a good start of showing what law isn't.
If we could force everyone in the North Star Borough to read the law,
which is just a little pamphlet, how can we pass a law to make them read the law?
There ought to be a law.
That building right there. I'm going to go over there and protest. I want everyone to be forced to read the law by Friedrich Bastille.
The first thing you have to do is make people understand what law is. And if you look at how the law came to be,
how it's been perverted.
No, hang on a second. I think most people do understand on a gut level what law with a capital L is. I think that people understand that when you go out and you pass a little L law that says that it's illegal for you to plant a garden or that it's illegal for you to collect rainwater, that's a stupid-ass law. I think people understand that. I think people get what law with a capital L is. It's written on their heart, deep inside. I don't think people need to understand what law is. I think people need to separate their own, or we need to do a better job, I think, of explaining the difference between
big L and little L.
Well, and that there's
does a little L stand for legislated?
Exactly. If you can go and make something up out of nothing, that's not a law.
It goes a little bit to what Hillbilly was saying. You have to have your own personal withdrawal of consent. Go out in your own backyard, even if you live in the city, and build you a little garden and put it in your heart that I'm building this so I can be free on my own.
458-TALK is the number. We'll be back after the Fox News in another hour.
Fairbanks is listening. Talk radio for the interior. 660 AM. KFAR. Fairbanks. AR. It's where you can talk about the real issues facing you.
If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. Samuel Adams.
The time is near at hand, which must determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves. George Washington.
And what country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that this people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Thomas Jefferson.
Posterity, you will never know how much it cost the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that ever I took half the pains to preserve it. John Adams.
I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. Thomas Jefferson.
Government is instituted to protect property, this being the end of government. That alone is a just government, which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. That is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where arbitrary restrictions, exceptions, and monopolies deny to part of its citizens the free use of their own faculties. James Madison.
It would be an absurdity for jurors to be required to accept the judge's view of the law against their own opinion, judgment, and conscience. John Adams.
Whenever the legislators endeavor to take away and destroy the property of the people, or to reduce them to slavery under arbitrary power, they put themselves into a state of war with the people, who are thereupon absolved from any further obedience. and are left to the common refuge which God hath provided for all men against force and violence. John Locke.
It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here, idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty, or give me death. Patrick Henry.
My people perish for the lack of knowledge. God.
Some people you can never please. You might as well just let them be. They mock everything not their own from their imaginary throne. But I won't bow down even if the whole world thinks I'm crazy. So hey, hey, this song is for us. So put your hands in the air if you're crazy like us. Hey, 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 that's freedom you hear.
Hey.
Right to your ear.
Hey. Hey, hey. Welcome to Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. This is hour 2 of the program. If you are just joining us, you can find us online at KFAR660.com. And the last hour should be posted within about the next 15 minutes or so.
I love your
or
new
less.
system, man.
You know, it's amazing what a little extra memory space will do for you on a computer.
Horsepower.
It's awesome. Joining us in the studio, of course, as always, from Bighorn Enterprises, it's Josh Bennett.
Hello.
And his brother, Aaron Bennett. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Steve.
It's good to have
The
you
beginning
all.
of year number 3.
Now, you're number 3. And, you know, I don't know what you were anticipating when we started this in terms of how far the program would go.
Not year number 3.
Or, you know, how long it would take before we began to either see a crackdown on us personally for doing this, or people waking up one way or the other. Have you seen people waking up? Because I haven't seen a crackdown. I've had some people complain and ask to get us off the air, but you know what? In this country, and especially in the radio business, money still talks.
I love it when people
you can buy airtime and put on whatever message you want to, and
I love it when people don't want other people to freely express themselves unless they agree. Just fun.
You're right, but you get caught up in this collective mentality.
Corporate.
Corporate collective. Collectively corporate
I'm going to read
mentality.
from Thomas Paine. This was the crisis. So I'm not going to read all of it, obviously. These are the times that try men's souls. Whoops. The summer soldier, the sunshine patriot, which we actually have. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. The end.
Thomas Paine, is that his real name or is that a pen name?
No, that was actually him.
So he wrote pamphlets.
Yeah.
Prior to the Revolutionary War and during the Revolutionary War.
Common Sense was his first one that he wrote that actually stirred men's hearts to reject the state.
Now, these pamphlets, they were available basically at cost, if I remember correctly, and they were distributed. People would buy them and pass them out, basically putting their own money on the line to go out and get these pamphlets passed out, and so that other people could get them free of charge.
There was like 2 million people in the colonies at the time that he wrote Common Sense, and he sold 500,000 copies. 2 million people total. So they figure that it's quite possible that every American colonist read or had read to them Common Sense.
And people wonder why the Revolutionary War took off. It was because people's hearts and minds had been changed. They were already free.
Right. We need to implement a little bit of that on the local level. That's kind of where my line of thought's been going.
Part of what he's saying there, too, is that if we got our freedom too cheaply, too easily, people, we need this now. We need, what are we going to do? What are we going to, If you get it so easily, folks, you'll forget it. Which is why we're in the situation that we are now, because we've had it too easy.
No, it's because we haven't voted in a good enough man.
Yeah, because we want to vote in a good enough man to do it for us. Instead of being free and doing things off our own sweat and blood from our own brow. We've always wanted someone else to do it. And liberty don't work that way, Chip. You have to fight for it. You have to constantly protect it. You have to constantly want it. It's one of those things, if you love it, you have to show it. If we get it too easily, we'll so much easily have it taken away from us again. And we need to figure out whether, one of the things we got to figure out is, what is this liberty that we want? Is it to go back to a constitutional republic? Which I say is impossible. Why do I say that? Because one of the people, his name was John Adams, who was a brilliant mind during the Revolution and prior to the Revolution. Then he became president and turned into a jackass. But before that, and actually after, he was brilliant. And one of the things that he said, and people should take this into heart when you're going down to the voting booths and you're doing this or that to try to get your free constitutional republic back. Once liberty is lost, it is lost forever. And he was specifically talking about the Constitution of the United States. He said, once this document is lost, forget it. It's lost forever. And even them, they, the founders, the founding generation.
So there is a they.
There is a they. Even they, but I'm specifically saying who they are.
I see.
Thomas Jefferson, for one, showed how, he has lots of writings where he said, this isn't for time and eternity. No one ever thought that this Constitution would be for time and eternity. How dare these founding fathers think that they can decide what we need today?
They can't.
They can't. So this form of government that they set up was for them. It was never for us to have, and they never dreamed that we would 250 years ago, because they knew in their hearts and minds that 250 years, if we had the same form of government, then we would get what we have today. A central government.
Didn't Thomas Jefferson himself advocate for having a revolution every, 75 years or so?
10 years.
And he
every
wasn't
10 years?
necessarily talking about, we're totally... Oh, it's that one again.
No,
That's what was going on when you said I was breathing.
That's because you're up here going...
Well, you got to be... If you're too far back from the mic, it overcompensates and tries to pick you up.
2 years, 3, what? How many years have we come in here with Steve and we still don't know how to talk into a microphone? Or you don't.
Hey, I take 2 days off from work and I forget how to do it.
Yeah, let's do them.
We got all 4 lines on hold. We go to the phones. 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Are you still there? Hello?
Hello.
Hey, who is this?
It's Bull. How you doing, Steve?
Bull, good. What's on your mind?
I was just setting the sayings that the kids read there at the beginning of the show. I think that's pretty good. Josh and Aaron, do you remember the first one by Samuel Adams?
Yes. You love wealth better than liberty. the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom. Go from us in peace.
We need not your counsel or your arms.
Crouch down and lick the hands that feed you.
Very good, very good.
And may posterity forget that you were ever our countrymen.
Correct.
That's my favorite part.
Me too.
Well, I was listening to the very beginning of your show, and you were talking about the 505, what is 503C, whatever.
501c3s, yeah.
And their licenses. You fellas got business licenses?
Yeah.
Really?
Don't want to be put in a cage, brother.
Well, if you love wealth better than liberty, you know, I hear a lot of rhetoric, and in all those sayings that the kids come off with at the beginning, I didn't hear a single place that said win the hearts and minds. Everything was, it's gone, we need a fight, we need to win it back.
We just got through saying we don't want to go back.
Oh, you mean... I guess I don't understand.
No, you win freedom back.
And you don't do that by going back to the same thing you had.
Okay.
It'll just be the same institution of us voting in people to lord over us and legalize plunder and legislative law.
Then your suggestion.
What do you mean?
Okay.
We've been talking about it, to remove consent from tyranny. And as far as the business license, I don't like having a business license, but that's one of the things you have to do. My point, and I obey the stupid little laws that go along with my business license. My point with a 501c3 is, if you're going to apply for a 501c3, then don't be griping about whether or not they ask you a certain question on it. Because I don't think that a church, especially, which is an institution of God, should be asking the state whether or not they should get together or not.
Right.
Totally different situation.
If you notice, Josh and I never come on here and talk about the effects of anything. That's for Alex Jones to do, or Sean Hannity to do. We talk about the cause. We could have probably the most accepted, loved show in America if all we did was talk about the effects of things.
Obama.
All right, we could talk about Obama till we're blue in the face and everybody love us. We're talking about the cause. And so if you recognize the cause, then obviously the hearts and minds are the only thing that matter. Is there some viable answers to a different form of government? Sure. There's some really good ones. Some really well thought out ones that we've touched upon, talked about a little bit.
And we've talked about armed revolution, and that is something in the past that I thought had to happen. But then on further study and looking, I see armed revolution, especially today, to have something even worse be implemented. And I don't want people to have to go kill each other. I would much rather have that people could come to the knowledge and the thought process to change.
Yeah, well, all the thought and all the knowledge in the world, the regime that's over top of us now ain't never going to let you out.
But only thought will take down the regime that is. In fact, if we wanted to break it down to what has happened in history, it wasn't force of arms that changed governments. It may have changed the person sitting at the head of it. But fundamental changes in government have always come from thought. Always.
And I'd have to argue about what you said, pure thought or whatever, but that's exactly what the much smarter people than me, by far. I just read. I don't write new things or anything. I read what somebody else wrote. I don't take credit for it. I just say, hey, look what this guy said. But people in the past who have been the revolutionary thinkers of the past, the smart ones that everyone in America looks back and says, wow, those guys are great. I wish we were like them. That's what they said. That's what John Adams said. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. That's what Etienne de la Boete said. That's what John Locke said. They all said you have to secure the hearts and minds of the people or there is no revolution. John Adams said that the revolution was won before the first shot was fired because the hearts and minds of the people were done with the British government. Once they had that, then it was over. The British government couldn't do anything to them.
Less than 20% of the people.
Yeah, I don't think we need 100% of the people in the United States to agree with us.
And the other thing that you have to keep in mind is, in those days, the best thing they had was a Kentucky rifle, and we happen to have it. British were still shooting with smoothbore muskets.
Yep, Kentucky rifle could pick a guy off at 600 yards in the hands of a good rifleman.
But at any rate, I just don't ever see this regime giving it up unless it's taken by force.
I don't think that I don't think that they're going to give it up. But see, I have a little different thought process on it. That I think that they're going not give it up willingly, but I think they're going to collapse because the monetary system as we know it is going to fail. And if they don't have any money, I mean, I'll tell you, that's my big hope with them. Well, it's not my big hope. I believe in God. But my hope with the government collapsing or giving it up, so to speak, isn't that they're going to freely do it. I think that their monetary system, the way that we see it now, this world monetary system is what it really is, will collapse. And I think under that collapse, that's what the change. There's going to be something different to come out of the smoke, so to speak. And I don't think it's going to be great times and everyone's going to be. I mean, we're far from utopians because we've actually lived. Well, I've only lived 39 years, but I haven't had a great time the whole time. We're far from utopians. But what comes out of the smoke at the end of the day is it's the only reason we're here, because we think the monetary system will collapse. There's something else is going to come out of it. And all we're here for is to say, hey, let's think about something different instead of putting tyrants right back in. Could we please discuss alternatives to tyranny? That's all we're talking.
The tyrants will come back in, and in recent past history, we have a good example of it, and that is the USSR, what is now Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they? They lost a lot of their satellites, but they're basically where they were. Do you know why Russia fell?
I assume because their monetary system collapsed. I mean, they couldn't pay the soldiers, and when the soldiers didn't get paid, they said, bye.
That was result. And you can check this. You're big on the computers. I am not. I got this through reading and some personal experience. Okay, the whole line with Reagan, I believe it was, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, was a whole line of BS.
Yep.
One of the most intelligent things that was said in a long time was said by Osama bin Laden. And what he said was, I will do to the United States what I did to Russia. Russia fought a war in Afghanistan against bin Laden, with us backing bin Laden for 10 years. It bankrupted them. How long have we been fighting over there?
10 years. 11 years.
Who's backing them now?
I assume the Russians would be.
That is very correct. And that's what you're going to see.
No, that's a great point. I'm glad that you called to bring that point up, because I actually I was thinking about that last night. This thing in Afghanistan, the Russians, I mean, we don't learn from anyone. At least the Russians had a pretty dang good military, and it was in their backyard. We got to go, I don't know, umpteen thousands of miles away to fight a war, and there's no doubt we're being bankrupted by it. We've spent $6 trillion, I believe. That's not sustainable.
I couldn't give you the figures, but I remember that statement. It's been a lot of years ago that came out over the news. As usual, it was only put up in print once, maybe twice, never seen it again by bin Laden. And I talked to some friends. I got some friends that are still playing games, we'll say. And in fact, a buddy of mine I see when I flew outside a couple of years ago, he's actually personal friends with Mr. Prince. And we were talking about what's going on. He looked me square in the eye. We were talking over a bottle of scotch. He looked me square in the eye. And he said, when it happens, he said, my best advice to you where you are is buy a nice, shiny red Russian flag.
Here's something that...
There is one good thing that's come out of all this, though. You had two world powers killing brown people. I mean, come on.
Come on. I was going to read you something. This is Bull, right? Still? Yeah. I was going to read you something I thought was interesting. I saw this last night, and it was about something that Osama bin... No, it wasn't Osama bin Laden that said it. It was written in 1963, The Pure Theory of Politics, by Bertrand de Havelman. I don't know. I don't know what his name is. Sorry. He says, if the terrorist blows are dealt at random, it will almost inevitably happen that reactions of authorities, so like if the terrorists are random terrorist events, then the reactions of the authorities, the state governments, will fly wide at the mark and affect the innocent. In other words, kill innocent people.
Correct.
Goading the authorities into hurting innocent bystanders is essential to the terrorist strategy. Its efficiency lies mainly in invoking blind anger and blundering retorts. And then he goes on, he said, so who is more politically savvy in this whole war on terror, Osama bin Laden or George W. Bush and Barack Obama? Unfortunately, no one likes to say it, but Osama bin Laden was pretty freaking smart. He knew he could do a few little blows to the United States. We would overreact. We're killing innocent people over there daily. Now, everyone over there hates us, not just like your radical fundamentalists. Everyone hates us because we kill kids and women, thousands, to the tune of thousands.
Josh, correction.
Yeah. Look back through history. You know, we won't go way back. We'll start with Castro. Who supported Castro? We did. After he got enough money and wine, he looked at us and looked around and said, "Who's paying me the most now?" Well, it wasn't us.
Yeah, who was paying Osama bin Laden during the Russian-Afghanistan war?
We were. I just went through that with you. We supported bin Laden for 10 years to fight the Russians, bankrupt the Russians. The USSR fell apart, but they are basically back to where they were. Now, from what I understand, their highest tax rate is 13%, but till you're done paying the local mobs off, you're way over that. And there's a local gentleman who's an eye doctor who actually has some stuff over there. I got to have a chat with him. It was pretty interesting. Anyway, I'll shut my mouth and get off here. I'd like to talk to you fellers someday. I know a young lady in town that knows y'all. I'll see that you get my number.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
Very much. You had a correction?
Right. I just wanted to say...
You were going to say something.
That's not dumb. You were saying that they hate us because we kill innocent people over there. It's just simply not true.
Because they're brown.
They hate us because we're free, Josh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You don't listen to any news at all.
Yeah, I do. That's why my head is constantly hurting. Got another one on there. Let's do it.
Can I read your quote really quick here? I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. This was a terrorist talking about the strikes that he was making on a crumbling empire. Do you know who it was? It was not Osama bin Laden. It was Genghis Khan talking about Rome. Let me read it again.
Wow.
I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. Anybody else see any comparisons with what's going on right now with the crumbling American empire and the terrorists?
Bringing up that the punishment of God. This is neither here nor there. It's just an aside. Remember when the hurricane went into Louisiana and wiped out
2006 Hurricane Katrina knocked out the levees in New Orleans?
Tore out that whole city and everything, just decimated it. And at the time, I remember I don't remember what preacher it was it Falwell or something like that, and said, this is God's judgment on that town for the sins of that town. God's judgment on America and all this and that, and for homosexuals, and on and on. So, last week we had this huge hurricane, or no, it wasn't a hurricane, it was a tornado, wipe out a town, like astronomical wind speeds, killed...
Almost 200 miles an hour.
Killed people. No, it was way over. It was almost 300, I believe. It killed a bunch of people and everything. So I heard this liberal person say, so this was God's judgment on the Bible Belt for... And I don't even remember what the deal was. I just remember thinking, wow. I mean, we're so stupid. I mean, we hate each other so much. And you know what it all comes back to is political ties. Who we're politically connected to. Whoever is opposite of your political beliefs, you hate them.
Well, duh, because both sides are stealing from each other.
It's divide and conquer. The whole thing. We hate so-and-so because he's got a D by his name. They hate so-and-so because he's got an R by his name. God's judging Louisiana. No, God's judging the Bible Belt. So, come on.
458-TALK is the number if you'd like to contribute to the conversation. This is Patriots Lament on Local Talk Radio, KFAR.
Fair, balanced, Fox. Now on KFAR.
Fox News Radio, I'm Don Matheson. A betrayal of a sacred trust. That's what Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel calls drug and alcohol abuse and sexual harassment in the military, telling West Point graduates,
"You'll need to not just deal with these debilitating, insidious, and destructive forces, but rather you must be the generation of leaders that stop it."
Many consumers red hot over the cost of their holiday weekend barbecues this year.
Wholesale meat prices hit a record high this week. Analysts blame the drought, and they warn that as expensive as those burgers are for this weekend, they'll be even pricier by the 4th of July.
Fox News Radio's Steve Knight. The wholesale price of choice grade beef up to $2.11 a pound. Protests against Monsanto and genetically modified food getting underway in many cities in the U.S. and elsewhere. They're concerned about the dangers. Fox News, we report, you decide.
To the men and women who protect our country, thank you. Fairbanks is listening. Local Talk Radio, 660 AM.
To Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. It's Local Talk Radio, but we are streaming live around the world at KFAR660.com, and we're on your smartphone if your phone is smart.
We don't play enough rock and roll on this show.
Shall we fix that right now?
Sure. Yeah, it's our second year, or I don't know what we're doing.
This is two? We are now in our third year.
Third year. Yeah. Second year anniversary is the third year. Probably doesn't sound as good as it does on these headphones. On the AM radio. But if you have a smartphone, it should sound really good.
Right.
Especially if you've got headphones on. This is the band Tourniquet off their Crawl to China album, America.
That's a really good album.
Oh, a really good album. Yeah, so what do you always know? The key, what do you say at the end of the show? We're supposed to, what's our action point?
Our action point.
Action point of the week. Buy Tourniquet's Crawl to China album.
All right. Well, you know, anything at all that starts nudging your thought process away from statism, I think it's a good step to take. When we started this 3 years ago, I did not realize how much of a statist I was.
Oh, we did.
Well, I know you did, but I mean, I thought I was free. I thought I was a nice, freedom-loving American. I had no idea how much of the statist philosophy I had bought into. That it had been so ingrained in my way of thinking. I mean, obviously, I served in the U.S. Army for 5 years. I had been an interrogator of enemies, prisoners of war. I had bought into the idea that cops are there to serve and protect, that the way to really affect change in America was through voting. All of these different aspects that are really just part of that statist lie. And it took me over a year of coming in here with you on Saturdays and occasionally having you drop by during the week as well, before my thinking finally began to change and I began to realize, wait a second, the way I act in terms of giving allegiance to the state violates what I say I believe about giving allegiance to God. That by my being a part of this system and by forcing my will on others through voting, I am committing an act of violence against someone, which I would never do physically.
Or face-to-face.
But it's perfectly fine for me to come and get together a bunch of people and vote to outlaw gay marriage.
Well, that's what it is. It's using someone else to do your dirty deeds. It really is. This is what I want, and I'm going to vote for it. I can't myself wouldn't do it, but I can get Joe Miller to do it for me. And that's really what it comes down to.
Who?
Joe Miller. Or any of them.
But if you follow his line of thinking,
Mark Buggett.
the average person is not smart enough, Josh, to discern what law is. So he needs to do it for us.
Yeah.
We need him.
You know, we've talked about this so much, it's sickening, but we just have to keep saying it. Who has the right to tell you what to do? Who has the right to govern you?
Well,
if you're listening to the program, ask yourself this. Just sit there. If you're having a barbecue or...
Invite me.
A barbecue.
Definitely invite me.
Or you're driving a side dump down the highway, do the speed limit, watch out for the North Pole cops because they're anxious and they shoot people and they always want to give us tickets. Go slow by the pedestrians. Let's see. Don't lift up your tub when you're going onto the ramp. Wait till you're on the fill. I'm not out there yet. I think they're listening.
Make the
It's
best
one of the
use of
requirements.
your
I
time.
ask after the show, I go get on the radio and say, on the big radio, I'm like, hey guys, what did I say? Kind of give them a little deal, and if they weren't listening, I'd dock their pay. So,
nice.
No matter what you're doing right now, ask yourself, sit there, get a little pride going on. Maybe that's what you need. And say, who should tell you what to do? Who ought to rule you? And I would say, no one ought to rule you.
Who is superior to you?
Who's superior to you? Yes, when you're voting for someone or pledging allegiance to this government and the state, you're saying that you are my superior. Now, the thought pattern is that, well, if you don't vote or don't get involved, you don't do this and that, then people that are inferior to you will get voted in and they'll rule over you. So that thought process is that you're going to vote for people that are smarter and better qualified to rule you than you are. So that's why you need to do it. So that way you can vote for the guy that's smarter than you. Are you that pathetic? Do you actually sit and think to yourself that someone needs to be there to rule over you, because if they don't, you'll, I don't know, explode? Boom, spontaneous combustion.
What is the
Or
actual
disappear.
saying that brilliant man said?
Which brilliant man?
It was, he wasn't so brilliant.
It's Plato, wasn't it?
Plato, yeah. He basically said, I don't know what the exact quote was.
You're obviously not brilliant enough to rule over me, Josh.
No, I am not.
Yeah, okay, now, if the people that we elect are so brilliant, why do they constantly bring in experts to tell them what is necessary? Why are they constantly using our money to pay for studies to find out what the effects of something are going to be? If they're so brilliant, why don't they already know? I mean, in some cases, they already do know. I mean,
Studies are pretty good money.
Down there in Nenana, they already know that it's going to be better for them to have a Nenana burro.
Yeah, they're going to be able to get,
And they're going through this study process more to convince the rest of
for the second time.
Against the will of the people.
Right.
Even though people have said no, people have voted no, people have turned in a petition saying no, the Nenana City Council has said, you know what, you're too stupid.
I don't know if anyone in Alyeska listens to the show, the corporation Alyeska. If you do, you might tell your superiors that maybe they want to fight that borough that they're trying to push through in the Nenana region. Because the only reason they want to start a borough there is to tax your pipeline. And you'll be shelling out more money to another borough that doesn't deserve it. So, anybody working at Alyeska, let your folks know. Maybe they need to, I don't know, do something. They need to fight that borough being put in Anana because the only reason they want it is to tax the pipeline. Bang! And anyone out there that works for Doyon, maybe you should fight, tell your superiors they should fight the implementation of a borough down there, because another reason they want it is because Doyon is studying and looking for gas out in the Nanana Flats out there. Well, gee, guess who'll get taxed if they get a borough implemented? Doyon. You will be taxed.
Plato said, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Which is funny because Frederick Ingalls, the same page, said, we find two great gangs of political speculators who alternatively take possession of the state power and exploit it by the most corrupt ends. The nation is powerless against these two great cartels of politicians who are its servants, but in reality dominate and plunder it.
Joshua Toe says that if everyone would remove their consent and not participate, there would be no one left to rule over you. That's just my Toe.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, if I just stood up and said, by royal decree, I now command you, Josh Bennett, to give me half of your income and allow me to make decisions for you.
Well, Steve, we would have to collectively vote you in to do that.
Well, what if you did not vote me in? What if I just decreed it?
But no one would listen to that.
Exactly.
It wasn't.
I'm doing it without your consent.
Wasn't Plato from Athens?
Greece?
Yeah, he was from Athens.
He was a Greek.
Yeah. This is what they say of Athens now. In the end, more than they wanted freedom, they wanted security. When the Athenians finally wanted not to give to society, but for society to give to them, when the freedom they wished for was freedom from responsibility, then Athens was no longer free.
Greece is in the exact same position today as it was then. Bunch of statists.
So is America.
Just like Plato. That's why they're all statists, because they read Plato.
Yep.
He's a statist. We care not for great, brilliant minds that love states.
Yeah,
because that's an oxymoron. Great, brilliant mind and loving the state.
Plato's great state raped themselves out of existence, literally.
And they did it again. And they're rallying and burning stuff in the streets because they're saying, hey, guys, we don't have any more money left. We can't give any more freebies. Burn it down. Give us the freebies. No austerity measures. Burn, baby, burn. Oh, fools.
Same story that happened to Carthage, the great democracy.
I know, but people don't like history. Cyprus, Greece, Italy.
Well, I
Portugal.
remember that was Michael Dukes' big comeback to us was Plato's saying.
Right. Plato. Who cares what Plato said?
Yeah, Plato came from a society that literally raped themselves to death.
Yeah. Because they read his stuff.
Death by Punji.
Death by Pluto. Besides that, obviously Pluto was a bad guy, because who's the bad guy in Popeye?
Plato. Plato, not Pluto.
No, I'm going to change his name. Because he's a Pluto. Yeah, it was Plato.
Let's take the calls. Phone calls 458-TALK.
We ruin our show.
Steve ruined it.
Good morning, caller. Who's this?
I would have not known the difference.
Hey, who is this?
Yeah. Good morning, Frank Turney.
Hello, Frank Turney.
Hey, okay. I won't vote no more for politicians. Okay.
Well, you have to vote for Joe, and then you can quit.
But jury duty, yes.
Yes.
Why I called, I got two announcements. The last caller before the 10 o'clock break probably made more sense today, even though I don't support him. I've had conversations with him regarding these struggling poor versus having the state take care of them. He's got my phone number. I've got some work for him. I'll pay him under the table, and it won't be welfare money. And the other one is, today at the Veterans Park, I'm reading from the Newsminer blog, and of course I already got an email, dozens of Fairbanks residents, along with thousands of people around the world, will be marching today to promote organic food to protect local farmers and spread awareness about genetically modified crap like herbicide they put on foods. I guess this is a march against Monsanto. Is that how you pronounce it?
Monsanto.
Monsanto, yeah. It'll be at 2 o'clock today at the Veterans Park, and I plan to bring some hemp products to share that I buy at my local store here. And I got to thinking, I supported that resolution that Lloyd Hilling supported.
Yeah.
Industrial hemp farming and Michael Dukes and Natalie Howard. But then again, I got to thinking about it. Why should we be asking the state to grow these things? To hell with them.
That's what I'm talking about, Frank.
Right.
Bingo.
It's just getting clear to my head. I hate the state. Have a good day.
Thanks for the call.
That was a perfect call.
Well, Josh, it's been 3 years, but we got one.
We got one.
No, you got two. You got me, too.
Yes.
I haven't heard Steve say
one a year.
The state.
Okay, Aaron Bennett. I hate the state.
Okay, we got two.
Hey, one every year.
I bet Abe Tolman would call it and say he hates the state.
Yeah, but he was already... we're talking about newbies.
Oh, he was already a state hater?
Or was he a statist? I don't remember.
He looks like a state.
Would you like to invite anyone to call in and say I hate the state?
Oh, if they wish to,
458-TALK, 458-8255.
And for you people, we have to say it again. Why don't you like Alaska? We love Alaska. We don't like the government, which is a gang of thieves, stealing and plundering, seeking who they may devour, just like the devil himself. Oh,
458-TALK.
Finger.
Good morning, caller.
Hey, this is Hillbilly. I hate the state. I refuse to be governed.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That ought to be our new greeting. Between that and what was on the old coin of the colonists of "Mind Your Business." I could go either way. Maybe have a two-sided coin and flip it every morning. Is my greeting going to be "I hate the state," or is it maybe it could be a call and response?
Hello, welcome to Patriots Lament. Do you hate the state?
Mind your business.
Simple yes or no. That'll tell whether we hang up on you or not, or let you talk. What was that? What he just said. I refuse to be governed. Bingo. That's what we talked about a while back when Jim and Kenai, our friend who needs to come up here and be on our show, mentioned that one time. Become less governable. That's awesome.
And push the margins. I did like that.
Push the margins. Become less governable every day. That's a personal choice you got to make for yourself. You got to internalize and put in your mind, your soul, and your heart, and say, I will be less governable. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be a freak show and start burning your neighbor's house down because no one's going to tell me what to do. No, that means you're going to be self-governed and take care of yourself and mind your manners and mind your business and do what you ought to do.
458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Hi, this is Vi.
Vi, what do you have to say?
Well, I hate the state, but
there's a caveat.
You guys have taught me a lot, okay? And you've moved me a long way in that direction. But I'm not quite all the way there yet.
That's okay. We're here for another year.
A lot of people don't go all the way over the edge because they don't see a viable answer to it.
That's right. I think we're going to end up with gangs of thugs forcing all the people who don't want to have war, that will have tyranny if we don't have some vision of some portion of a state.
Well,
go ahead.
There is some really viable answers, and I agree with all the people. It seems like everywhere I go, somebody always wants to. They're always caught on that, and I think Josh and I owe it to everybody to definitely expound a lot more on viable answers, because there's some really good ones. We've hit on them before, but I agree that we haven't gone into depth on them enough, and I think that
it's been a while.
People are caught right where you're caught, where they hate the state, they see it for what it is, but they don't see the answer, and it's hard to let go if you don't see the answer.
Well, self-protection is one of them. That's what she specifically brought up, and that's a good point. I don't necessarily think that we would have gangs of roving bands. I think that has been ingrained into our minds, mostly from people that read Hobbes.
But you can also look around at the world and see it. Mogadishu hasn't had a state in reality in 25 years, and they are ruled by mobs.
That's not entirely true. What they have is they have little individual tribes It's their governments that are warring with each other. These little gangs that you talk about, this has been portrayed by people in the West as a kind of a bogeyman to keep us sucking at the teat of big government. If you look at the actual what's going on in Somalia, it's a return to the tribalism that they had before there was a centralized government. It is still a form of government, and it is still a government by force of individuals over others.
And there was a lot of people getting killed there when they had a government.
Exactly.
But see, one of the things you need to think about though is let's pretend that you were in here in the studio with us and it was the four of us. She's still on?
Yes, I'm still on.
So the four of us are in this studio. Would you say that one of the four of us has to lord over the other three, or there would be chaos?
No.
And now, what about if we were at some kind of conference and there was 100 of us? Would one of us have to have absolutely the monopoly on force over everybody else?
No, but you do need to have some, I don't know what you want to call it, guidance.
Let me keep going.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about a village, we're talking like 1,000 people. Does there need to be one person that has absolute power over everybody else?
Definitely not absolute power, no.
But it's when it becomes anonymous, when the amount of people becomes anonymous, that we think that it has to be that way.
Even when you get to the point where you don't know everybody in the room. It's not even necessarily anonymous. It's just that I don't know exactly who you are. I might even know your name, but I don't know you.
Now, we see it going on in our everyday lives at all times. Self-governance. We see it all the time, but we assume...
You go into Safeway. You drive down the road.
I trust the guy that's driving in the opposite direction from me not to come into my lane. I don't need to build a wall down the middle of the highway to keep him from going on my side.
But when you think about the whole nation, you assume that you need regulation on that.
And if we look at, I think the premise is false in the beginning. And I think it's from Hobbesians back in John Locke's time in the 1600s. But he wrote that everyone's just a roaring lion, basically, and there's gangs and rogues, and everyone's so utterly wicked, all they want to do is kill people.
To actually say it the way he said it, every man is another man's wolf.
Right, but I don't think everyone is like that, but I do think that a significant plurality is, and unfortunately that's where you end up, where I am, that you have to have some protection for all the people who are not able to stand up for themselves.
Well, we could go with next week. Let's talk about it. We'll talk about private security, which is so viable. We've talked about it before. We need to do it again. It's so viable. But also, this comes back to being your neighbor. And we can do that. We are not so regressed back into the Stone Age, which that's a different show, to where we're all going to kill each other. And if we see a granny over there getting beat up by a mob, the only reason that you see YouTube videos where some guy's getting the crap kicked out of him by a mob and no one does anything,
standing there filming it.
Right, but it's because they say we're the cops.
Right,
There's no
because
the
law enforcement has a monopoly on the use of force. So if you do anything...
If they didn't have that monopoly, you would feel free to go over there and say,
put down the phone,
say hello to my 45, and stop it.
All right, let me take Vi back.
I got one more thing. Just one more thing. And going back to violence and roaming gangs and stuff like that, the state is the worst roaming gang there is. They kill people every day. It's in the news where a cop kills someone. If you look at Mogadishu, they're warring over there. We have killed millions of people from our state, has killed millions of people in war. Millions. They figure that we killed 1 million civilians in Iraq. We've killed hundreds of thousands in Afghanistan. We killed 500,000 children under the age of 10 with our embargo on Iraq. That's a UN number that the State Department conceded to, and they said, yeah, it was worth it. So if we look at
Hillary
number-wise...
Clinton said it was an acceptable loss.
No, it was someone even dumber than her, if that's possible. It was the State Department lady. Anyways,
Madeleine Albright.
Albright, that's exactly right. But if we look at statistics and numbers and put it all together, the state itself kills way more people than roaming gangs and bands. And I think once that option isn't there, and they don't have the monopoly on that option, the monopoly on violence and protection and force, other areas and things will pop up, and people will feel more free. I don't even pull people out of the snowbank. Well, I do, but I don't want to tell Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
you can't pull people out of a snowbank anymore because you can get a ticket from a police officer. I know because I've been told that by a police officer. Hey, what are you doing? Well, so there's no incentive for us to do any good. And the reason that is because the state wants us to think, this is where I say that it's a false premise. The state has ingrained into our minds we have to have them.
Go back to Vi's original objection in terms of personal safety. Vi.
Yes.
Do you have a reasonable expectation that you will never be broken into?
I have a reasonable expectation that if my dogs don't scare people off, I'm going to shoot somebody.
Okay. Now, wait a second. You don't depend on the state to protect your home?
No. I know these police in this town too well for that.
Okay. No, that's a super good point. The Supreme Court even said police officers are not obligated to protect you.
Okay, so then what is the point of having them? If the point is for protection, Vi, and you don't feel protected by them, and you feel like you have to protect yourself, why do you feel like somehow we still need them?
I don't necessarily think we do need police, at least not the kind of police we have right now.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I told you guys have brought me a long way. I'm just not all the way where
right.
you guys
Well,
are yet.
and that's our fault. And the next show, and I'd like to actually take the next two shows and give a viable answer. First, and I think it's a two-part answer to something very, very viable and realistic.
All right. You want to give us
No, we've talked about it before. The market, obviously, we believe the market takes care of everything. The market is everything. I pointed out early in the show, that I believe compassion comes from the market. Everything stems from it. And we've talked about insurance agencies, but I think for people to grasp it once and for all, we need to really break down what an insurance company is and what it does, and what the state has done to it and what the difference is, before we explain how it could take care of that problem.
And we don't expect anyone to agree with us 100% at all. I mean, you can all
that would be kind of tyranny, wouldn't it?
Well, sure. You guys, everyone else can have their flaws.
Well,
I'm just joking. Totally joking. We don't ask anyone to agree with everything. All we're asking is look at the situation in a different way. Come to your own conclusions. Read for yourself. Think for yourself. That's all this is
Of course,
about.
if we had an election and voted me in, I could force everybody to.
Oh, my goodness.
We would have a law passed in this borough that you had to read the law by Bastiat.
All right.
No.
Okay. Can I ask you one more question, Vi?
Yeah.
All right. Is there ever a point where you personally feel like you would go and force someone to do what you want them to do?
The only time I could ever think of a time of doing that would be if they were doing something that was harming another person. And I can think of examples of that, because I have stuck. I'm not a very big woman, and I've stuck my face right up into a large man's face and said, "You are not going to hit your wife in front of me. I'm going to hurt you if you do that." And he backed off, actually, which was pretty surprising. It would be an example like that, where I saw somebody trying to harm somebody else.
A defensive measure.
Even a defensive measure on behalf of someone else. You would actually physically go out there and step in and force someone to stop hurting someone else.
Yes.
All right, let me ask you this one follow-up question. If you saw the police hurting someone else.
They're well-armed and better armed than I am, but yeah, I would want to step in.
Yeah. That's not why we don't step in, though. It's because they have the monopoly on the use of force, not because they're better armed. Right, but they'll kill you.
And I would be the one standing over there with my phone recording them so that I could try to get it into a court of law.
They're posted on YouTube so everybody can see.
They're sanctioned in killing you. That's what.
Right. Thanks so much.
Thanks for calling in. Appreciate it.
Gentlemen, we will see you next week on Patriots Lament starting at 9 a.m. Up next,
for year 3,
Help Talk.
KFAR Fairbanks, 660 a.m. Online at KFAR 660.